Hello everyone. In this video, I will briefly talk about economy and the working life from a sociological point of view. While doing this, I will follow a similar path that the first chapter, first volume of your book, Social Structure of Turkey, follows. So while I'm discussing on economy and working life, I will first of all provide definitions of work, unemployment, and formal and informal work. Then I will turn my attention to explanations, certain explanations which are the main dimensions of the working life in Turkey: poverty, employment, and labor force. Then I will focus on discussing main issues people face in working life. And lastly, I'm going to pay attention to give you information concerning to the institutional actors in Turkey and problems in their working life, particularly in Turkey. Let's start first with basics of the economy and working life, which are the definitions of the concepts like work, unemployment, formal and informal works. By a narrow definition, work can be defined as an activity of an individual to sell his or her labor in return of wage. On the other hand, by a broad definition, we can say that work includes all the activities that people do. Such activities can be paid or unpaid activities. The main point in such a broad definition is that people work in order to maintain social or economic life. Working in modern societies has a number of important functions. First of all, it provides individuals a new social network other than the family and acquaintances. And second, we can say that individuals regulate their lives by means of work. This regulation positively affects their social and psychological health. When we look at our modern societies, we see that work and occupation shape people's social identities. Therefore, unemployment has numerous negative effects other than earning money. Unemployment in a society refers to a state of people who are ready and willing to work, but being unable to have a job, although they possess required qualifications to do such jobs. We can point out 8 different types of unemployment, which are involuntary unemployment, voluntary, seasonal, cyclical, structural, temporary, hidden, and technological unemployment. The main effects of unemployment on individuals can be a decline in the quality of life due to lack of finances, decrease in person's self-esteem and self-confidence, and worsening of physical and mental health, and we can also point out loss of social status. When we look at what formal and informal works mean, we can say that these terms are opposite of each other, of course. Formal work is the employment of workers by employers with or based on official and formal labor contracts. The typical characteristic of the formal employment are regular work, job security, reasonable and regular payment. On the other hand, informal work is a form of employment of workers by employers with an informal, unwritten labor contract. The informal work doesn't provide most of the benefits of the formal work. When we look at the main dimensions of working life, poverty, employment, and labor force in Turkey, we should first of all point out that Turkey's population in 2017 is over 80 millions. In total population, the populations of the labor force who are, as we identified, who are ready to work is over 31 million people, and the total employment rate is 47%. By 2017, the total population of the employed people was around 28 million people. Among those who are employed, 19% is employed in agricultural sector and also 19% in industry, 7% in construction sector, and 55% is employed in the service sector. The majority of the employed population in Turkey live in the urban areas. The largest population in the workforce includes paid wage workers and casual workers. The second one is the largest group, which includes the self-employed people. The third group includes unpaid family workers. Looking at the inequality rates that are one of the main factors behind the poverty in not only in Turkey but also in the entire world, we can see that the income distribution, unequal distribution of income, is a quite important factor, and between the rural and urban areas, as well as between males and female workers, income distribution is quite uneven. The richest part of the society gets 7 times more income than the poorest part of the society. We can also see that an important part of the working population in Turkey work for minimum wage. The data of the Social Security Institution in Turkey demonstrates that more than 5 million people worked for minimum wage in 2015. Furthermore, people who work with minimum wage in informal jobs are not included in these figures. Considering the poverty line, more than 14% of the population seems poor. More than 1/5 of the population is poor. And in addition, some studies other than the official estimations suggest that the poverty in Turkey is essentially much deeper than what the official statistics point out. When we look at the main issues people face in working life in the entire world, we can see that the main problems of working life are informalization, flexibility, deunionizations of the workforce, pervasiveness of subcontracting system, and discriminations in working life. The concept of informalization can be defined in its narrow and broad sense. And in the narrow sense, informality means being unrecorded. In the broad sense, we can consider informality as that economic activities, employment relations, and work processes are realized under informal, non-official, and unwritten rules. Flexibility in the working life means employment of the labor force based on the size and conditions that the employer desires. Therefore, it is usually considered as a potential of the firms to decrease the labor force when market conditions are worsened. Deunionization means that the workers in a work branch are unable to benefit from the legal right of being organized. Subcontracting means purchase of goods and services from another firm in a cheaper way without constantly employing workforce in formal way. It's a very important employment strategy in the 21st century for employers to reduce the overall cost of labor force. And discrimination is a quite important problem in our era in the working life. It occurs when an individual is adversely discriminated in relation to a number of factors, including gender, age, mental or physical disability, pregnancy, or criminal record. When we look at the institutional actors and problems in the working life, particularly in Turkey, we see that there are a number of institutional actors formed to secure and further their interests of their members in the working life. These organizations have a capacity to form and change the public opinion. Among these organizations, we can point out large organizations under which big investors, employers, and financial holders come together to seek their own economic interests. We can also point out a large-scale trade union and confederations under which employees come together to seek for their own interest in the market relations. Looking at the problems of working life in Turkey, we can in fact point out quite a number of different problems. However, among these problems, two of them perhaps can be pointed out as urgent areas that the political authority or state should deal with urgently. These are a general decrease in wage of all employees, regardless of their working in the private sector or public sector. And the other urgent problem is increase in informal works that do not provide social security coverage and tax payment to the state. In Turkey, migration from rural to the urban areas, the high levels of the poorly educated and unskilled labor force, and unregistered working forms, rising youth unemployment rates, and subcontracting system result in a decrease in wage and an increase in informal works without social security registrations. Different groups are affected in different levels from these adverse developments, but the disadvantaged groups such as women, disabled, and young people are at a higher risk of becoming working poor. Particularly, flexible employment and informalization in working life causes an increase in number of working poor in not only in Turkey but in entire world. Briefly saying, working life and economy are among the main areas of subject in modern sociology. There are quite a number of different sociological perspectives that discuss many issues in working life and economy from different point of views. This chapter of the book, Social Structure of Turkey, Volume 1, briefly introduces basic concepts and issues of the working life and economy. It starts with the definitions of work, unemployment, and summarize certain characteristics of formal and informal works. Following this, it focuses on explaining main dimensions of the working life in Turkey, as well as characteristics of poverty, employment, and labor force. Then this chapter turns its attention to the problems faced in the working life globally. Lastly, the chapter pay attention to inform you in term about the institutional actors and problems of the working life, particularly in Turkey. Thank you to join me.